What is going on, everybody? Welcome into another episode of the Sick Podcast. Steelers crazy. We've got a big one coming up this Sunday night. Who knew after the Ravens beat the Steelers to drop them to 5-8 that ultimately this Steelers-Ravens game in Week 17 will be flexed to Sunday night in a big spot. I'm Mike Nicastro. That's my man, Jordan York. We're going to talk about all of it, the Ravens expert, in just a few minutes. We're really excited for you guys to tune into this episode. And once again, happy that Steelers football is still meaningful to everyone. Well, listen, it would be regardless. Even if they were 1-15, people would still tune in. So let's jump right into it right after this. Sammy, go ahead and roll it.
Turn up your volume. Because you're about to listen to The Sick Podcast. Steelers Crazy.
Harris Smith shields. Flacco Polamalu takes it home. Super Bowl 43. Pittsburgh might be bound for that thanks to number 43.
The sickest Pittsburgh Steelers podcast.
Sports entertainment like no other. It's gonna be sick.
And he is host and producer of Locked On Ravens. He's also the managing editor for Ravens Wire. We are excited to welcome on Kevin Ostreicher. Kevin, I didn't mess up your last name, did I?
No, you got it perfect. I'm proud. Yeah, it's good to be on, guys. Excited for Ravens. There's always good games between these two.
Always good games. I have to ask, you seem like you might be in the same age bracket of us to a degree. Were you an American Pie fan, the movie, the series?
Yeah, it's people always give that comparison, but yeah, people when they look at my last name say, "Oh, American Pie," so I get that one a lot. Yeah,
fair enough. I'm glad we got that out of the way because that was like my glory growing up in my teens. I thought it was so cool watching American Pie, and Ostreicher was a great character in that. All right, let's jump right into it. Of course, we have a big game, as I mentioned, this Sunday night, and the elephant in the room, if you will, is Lamar Jackson and his injury status. So what can you tell us? Where are we at with that?
Yeah, for now, we're on Thursday and still no sign of Lamar Jackson through the first 2 days here. So it's not looking likely that he'll play in this game. If he gets a limited practice on Friday, then I would, maybe there's some hope, but I would assume he would need at least one limited practice throughout the week. And so Lamar injured his knee week 13 against Denver. It was a sprained PCL. Adam Schefter reported a 1 to 3 week timeline, but the Ravens have been pretty tight-lipped about it all, where they haven't really put out a timeline. John Harbaugh's been asked about it. He's said stuff along the lines of, "We'll see. I'm just coaching the guys that are here." So they really don't want to put out anything on this injury status. And I know that they've had a couple of things in the past where they've put out timelines, and those timelines weren't necessarily accurate. Not like they weren't trying to, put out false information, but sometimes injuries can go a different direction than you think, and it takes longer to recover. So they've been tight-lipped about their injuries in the past. The Ronnie Stanley situation, before he came back, we didn't really have a ton of clarity there before he actually got on the field. But obviously, Lamar gives you the best chance to win. Like he's the guy you want under center. Tyler Huntley, I think, is a fine backup for Lamar Jackson, but Lamar Jackson gives you the best chance to win. There's no doubt about that. So as of now, not looking likely he'll play. Maybe that will change over the course of the next 24, 48, 72 hours here as we get into Sunday night. But two missed practices for Lamar, at least with the time of this recording. Maybe a practice report comes out on Thursday that he actually was limited, and it's just the media availability he wasn't. But for now, he at least missed Wednesday's practice, but he hasn't played, so I feel like he needs some time to ramp up that knee at least before getting back on the field.
Kevin, there's been a lot of pondering nationally. I've seen some debates on some of the big, ESPN morning shows and talk radio that Lamar is kind of maybe pushing in his corner to not to come back, given the fact that he's a free agent, given the fact that he doesn't want to re-aggravate an injury, obviously, which ultimately I'm sure would lose him some money in the long term. And then there's the other side, of course, naturally, that the Ravens are in a good position for the playoffs. You want them 100% going into that. Is it a combo of both? Are you ready to kind of shut down the former?
I think for what the Ravens have right now, they've built their team around him, but they've lacked building the weapons around him, I think is what people are looking at, where, they have the offensive line is so much better this year. I know Steelers fans are familiar with the name Alejandro Villanueva. He was a disaster, to say the least, in Baltimore in 2021. That offensive line went through a ton of injuries, but they've had that. And when the Ravens drafted Lamar Jackson back in 2018, they had to commit to building a team around him, around his skill set. And I think they did a pretty good job of that in the first couple of years, where 2018, that was still like Joe Flacco's team up until Lamar got in. So, you're not building it then. But 2019, they ask him pretty much, who do you want? And he says Hollywood Brown. So they get him over guys like A.J. Brown, who was my number one in that class personally. But then you have DK Metcalf and Deebo Samuel and all those guys. But then after that, they haven't really brought in when you've seen Josh Allen get Stephon Diggs. You've seen DeAndre Hopkins and Marquise Brown go to Kyler Murray. You have A.J. Brown in Philadelphia now with Jalen Hurts. So we've seen the Ravens and we've seen Lamar Jackson both say that they want their partnership to continue. There's a lot of speculation out there. There are subtle hints that people are picking up on that, Lamar being left off of a Christmas card by the Ravens and everyone's like, oh my God, like he's leaving. Oh my God. Like, I think for now,
maybe not a big fan of Christmas. Who knows?
Yeah. I think that was more just like, hey, these guys are healthy right now. Lamar's not healthy. So we're just going to put the guys who were playing on the card. But regardless, I think that the Deshaun Watson deal threw a lot out of whack for not only the Ravens, but for a lot of teams, with the Bengals having to sign Joe Burrow coming up, the Chargers and Justin Herbert coming up. That guaranteed money deal, Lamar, he deserves every penny of the deal he gets. He is a franchise quarterback. He is somebody that, if he leaves, if he is traded by the Ravens, they have to kind of go through the entire process of finding out, hey, is the next guy we get the guy for us? And if not, it could set the franchise back 2, 3, 4, because you have to continue to go through that quarterback carousel. So there's a safety valve almost in knowing you have a guy, but at the same time, signing him to a $200 million deal, 250, 300. It sets your roster a little bit in the situation where you can't spend big on maybe a position that you need, maybe as a corner or as a defensive line or an offensive lineman. So I still think a deal gets done. And this is purely opinion, no reports or anything, but I still think that they get the job done. But I do think it's taken way longer than I thought. I thought Lamar's going to sign back when Josh Allen signed, and that deal's looking like an absolute steal for Buffalo right now. Even the Mahomes deal's looking like a steal for Kansas City. So there's a lot of speculation going on, but at the end of the day, I'm still hopeful that they get something done.
Great points. And honestly, some positive takeaways if you're listening to this naturally from a Steelers perspective, which I'm sure a lot of you are, that the Steelers will have Kenny Pickett most likely on a rookie deal for the next 4 years. All right, before I turn it over to JY, I got to bring up something. Obviously, the Steelers were flexed into this Sunday night game. Patrick Queen jumped onto Twitter and said, why flex that? I think it was only 3 words, ... I made the assumption that Queen might be taking a little shot at the Steelers. Patrick Queen fired back at me. Pretty hard there. He gave me the before you start your BS. I meant I'd rather play early as a player. No disrespect to them. And then the peace sign, which is certainly my bad if I put words into his mouth. If not, maybe a good recovery. I guess just a quick question to you. Is it a good idea to make Patrick Queen mad?
Patrick Queen is a player. He is someone. He's one of those guys that, like, when he plays with his hair on fire, he is someone who, like, is pretty much unstoppable. And he had a couple of rough years to start up and down, but a lot of that 2020 class, like during the COVID situation, they didn't have a training camp really. There wasn't a preseason, so they were kind of behind the 8 ball of getting into the league and getting that, we're getting up to the NFL speed. But this year, Queen, even before the Roquan Smith trade, he's been great. And I think when he plays with energy, and certainly energy on Twitter, he has somebody, I don't know, him and Roquan Smith together make up, I think, one of the best inside linebacker duos in this league. But even before Roquan Smith came in, Patrick Queen was playing great. Like, he was playing really, really good football. I think Roquan Smith just elevated everybody else on that defense, including Patrick Queen. So, yeah, I thought he was talking more about just like the timing, because Baltimore's played 2 back-to-back Saturday games. So, and their Week 15 game was flexed from Sunday to Saturday. So they're moving parts, and there's actually a possibility that with this game being at 8:20 here, if the Ravens win and the Bengals win, or even if the Ravens lose and the Bengals lose, they'll be playing for the North in Week 18. That game could be the Sunday night game or something. So the Ravens have been dealing with a lot of schedule stuff going on. I think he's excited to play in this game. I know all Ravens fans are excited for the Ravens to match up against the Steelers again. And the Ravens players always say that in order to be a Raven, you have to beat the Steelers. That's your official, hey, welcome to the club. You're a Raven. You got to beat the Steelers. I know for a lot of people that happened a couple weeks ago, so they got their, hey, you're a Raven now. But it'd be nice to do it again, I know, for a lot of those players.
Man, you just fell into my question. So obviously, a few weeks back, the Ravens did beat the Steelers. Why?
Oh, it had to be the run game, 100% the run game, and it's crazy because I feel like everyone knew it was coming. Like everyone in the stadium knew the Ravens were going to run the ball. I felt like the Steelers knew the Ravens were going to run the ball, and they just could not stop it. And it was against a good Pittsburgh run defense. It's not like Pittsburgh's run defense was terrible the entire season, but the Ravens averaged 5.1 yards per carry, and the game plan kind of dictated running, where Tyler Huntley only attempted 12 passes. He goes out in the concussion protocol. Anthony Brown has to come in, and Anthony Brown, high leverage. You have the terrible towels waving all over the place. It's the fourth quarter. You got Renegade, and he comes in there, and he game manages. He had a couple of nice throws.
That
He
was
didn't
his
turn
moment.
the ball over exactly, and it wasn't too big for him. But you have J.K. Dobbins, you have Gus Edwards. Those guys carried the load for the Ravens. But I also think the other key in this game were the turnovers that the Ravens were able to generate, each of them coming in pretty plus territory for the Steelers, where they were driving down the field. And Mr. Trubisky, it almost seemed like the exact same play to both Roquan Smith and Patrick Queen deep in the Baltimore area of the field.
Well, Matt Canada is our offensive coordinator, so I'm sure it was the same 3 plays.
I know Ravens fans are having their issues with Greg Roman over here, so I know there are a lot of people who are in the contingent of moving on from Greg Roman as well. But even the Marcus Williams play where, he was, I think he was rolled down at the 1 or something because he got carried into the end zone and the Ravens were able to get out of it. That was Anthony Brown's first play, and he said, Anthony Brown said after the game, he was asked, what are you thinking? Passing from the 1 yard line. Like, what do you think? He's like, hey, I think it's an opportunity for a 99-yard drive. Obviously, it didn't go that way, but that confidence. So I think the key, it's the same thing in this game. If the Ravens can run the ball, maybe generate a turnover or 2 against Kenny Pickett to get the momentum back, it was the formula for success. But Pittsburgh did leave 12 points on the board in a 2-point loss because they weren't able to convert in Baltimore territory. So if just one of those goes Pittsburgh's way, the outcome's a lot different. So that's why I always say it's always close, always hard fought, and a play or two can really define it.
It's a game of inches. I know we talked about Lamar Jackson. Just talk about, is there anyone else on the injury report for the Ravens?
Yeah, there are a couple of guys who we're definitely monitoring the status of. Marcus Peters and Calais Campbell are 2, where they both didn't practice on Wednesday. The timelines for them, I think they're a little different, but I think the initial ones were a couple of weeks. So it wouldn't shock me to see either of those guys out there, but it also wouldn't shock me to see either of them not on the field too. Those are 2 very important guys. Marcus Peters has kind of had an up and down year. He was coming back from the ACL. So if he's not able to go, it'd be Brandon Stevens filling in at corner. They'd have other guys such as rookie Pepe Williams. And then Campbell, he is the ageless wonder. He is still doing it in his 15th NFL season. But they have defensive line depth that's good. Justin Madubuike, who's a third-year guy. Broderick Washington. They have Travis Jones, who's a rookie, 3rd-rounder for them. So Campbell would be a big loss. Peters would be a big loss. Obviously, Lamar Jackson would also be a big loss. But those are really the 3 guys. Other guys on the injury report were either for rest, at least at this point, going into Wednesday. It was rest or actually illnesses. So hopefully those guys can heal up and be ready for Sunday.
We're talking with Kevin Ostreicher here on the Steelers Crazy Sick podcast. Thanks so much for joining us. Check out the bottom line. If you're watching this on YouTube, follow us on Twitter at SickPodSteelers. I think you're at K Ostreicher 34, correct, on Twitter. So everybody can go ahead and find that. There we go, right there. Nice little graphic. We'll give it to you. I'm sure people out there weren't going to try and spell Ostreicher. That's sneaky E, I think. People would have given it a
That's
shot.
it. That's exactly it.
All right, we'll get you out of here. 2 things. And then first one, we'll make it quick and easy. The Ravens will win if.
I think running the ball effectively and also getting off to a fast start. But I think my biggest key, the Ravens will win if they score in the red zone. Baltimore has had a horrendous red zone offense this year. They are 30th in the NFL in touchdown percentage in the red zone. It's around 46.3%, I believe. You go over the last 3 weeks, that number drops to just 22.22%, which is by far the worst mark in the NFL. So they've been trading touchdowns for field goals for the majority of the season, and it just hasn't been good. There's been questionable play calling, questionable execution. And again, in a hard-fought close game, like I'm assuming this is going to be again, you can't leave those points on the board because it's probably going to come down to 1 possession. And the Ravens, they didn't have a great game red zone wise against Pittsburgh. They did score a touchdown, but it's been very few and far in between for them. I know Pittsburgh's red zone offense has been better than Baltimore's. It's kind of in the middle, but Baltimore, they've been going like 1 for 4 in the red zone, 1 for 3 in the red zone. If they can up that to maybe 2 for 3 or 2 for 4 and get that extra touchdown in there, I think it'll go a long way. So if the Ravens can execute well in the red zone, I think that's where Baltimore wins.
I know you essentially can take that thing, flip it and reverse it, like Missy Elliott once said, but the Steelers will win if.
The Steelers will win if they can stop Baltimore's run game. I know that the Pittsburgh run defense was not happy after that game. You know, I talked with Chris Carter of Locked On Steelers for today's episode, and he said that Cam Hayward, you know, was in the locker room very upset about everything because he didn't say they were out physical. It was just execution-wise and didn't get the job done. So if they can focus in on that and make Baltimore one-dimensional, if it's not Lamar Jackson, Tyler Huntley, he has had an issue pushing the ball down the field this year. He's not the best deep ball passer, still has that area of his game to work on. So if Pittsburgh can get Baltimore into 2nd and long situations, 3rd and long situations, and force them to throw the football, I'm not saying Tyler Huntley can't do it. I think he can, but I think it is much easier for Baltimore at this stage of the season to run the ball effectively, as they've averaged 5.1 yards per attempt, over 7 yards per attempt, 5.4 in their last 3 games. That's their recipe for success. They ground and pound teams into oblivion. So if they can stop that, if Pittsburgh can stop that rush offense, get Baltimore into those 3rd and longs, and get the ball back to their offense and Kenny Pickett, I think that's where Pittsburgh will win.
All right, I'm going to bring Jordan back in. Maybe we'll get a little spirited debate to end this. Jordan, you go first, and Kevin will jump in. Jordan, your score prediction.
I'm not just saying this. I think it's going to be a close game, but I'm going to say Steelers 23, Ravens 20, just because I don't think Mike Tomlin wants to have a losing season. And I know that, you know, we're hanging on by a thread in the playoff race, but if you paid attention last year, I went to bed and woke up and we were in the playoffs. I went from wanting to break my TV to going to run and jump in the Allegheny River and celebrate. So I think that the Steelers pull it out. Obviously not having, you know, Lamar Jackson, which it's looking like that. That's why I say that. I think if they did have him, I think it would be the other way around and the Ravens would come out victorious. That's my 23-20 Steelers.
Yeah, I think it's going to be close too. I'm going to put belief in Tyler Huntley, though. I'm going to go 24-21.
He's Ravens. A good quarterback. He is. And he's had some struggles over the past couple of weeks. But I think, again, he is the ideal player you want in this place of Lamar Jackson. If you have to start anybody, I think he's somebody who he's a good backup for you. But I just think the way the run game is playing, the way the defense is playing right now, those 2 areas, we didn't really get to see Kenny Pickett against the Ravens defense. It was 2 drives and he was done. So this is kind of like they get to redo it here and have the first crack at each other. But I think that for the Ravens, they have historically had success against rookie, 2nd year, 3rd year guys who are seeing this defense for the first time. And obviously, I'm going to say it's Kenny Pickett's first time because we didn't see a ton of them. But this is a new defense. You know, Don Martindale's in New York now. This is a Mike McDonald-led defense that is not as aggressive as Don Martindale. Don Martindale is definitely the more live by the blitz, die by the blitz guy. Very, very aggressive, exotic blitz schemes. Mike McDonald, I think, is more situational in when he brings his pressure and when he simulates that pressure. So I think we're going to see a very creative game plan on defense by the Ravens to try to confuse Kenny Pickett, get the ball out fast, you know, make him go through his reads a little quicker than he'd want to. So I'm going to say the Ravens ride their run game and their defense on the way to a victory. And they need this one, especially if Buffalo's not able to beat Cincinnati in Week 17.
He's a host and producer, Locked On Ravens, managing editor for Ravens Wire, Kevin Ostreicher. Dude, thanks so much. Happy New Year.
Yeah, Happy New Year, guys. Man. Thanks so much for having me on.
Best of luck.
RJ Wyatt, that's a wrap on this episode. We're looking forward to the game Sunday night. I didn't give my prediction. I'm with you, though. I think somehow the Steelers hang on by a thread.
It's just the Steeler way, man.
Maybe. And I'm with you, too. If Lamar Jackson was playing, I would not have that same prediction. But he made a great point at the end there. We didn't even touch on it. Kenny Pickett didn't play that first game, essentially. He had the first quarter, went out with a concussion, and then Trubisky was not good. So
let's hope that doesn't happen again.
I think it flips the script. But the big 2 games earlier, we need the Jets to lose to the Seahawks, and we need the Dolphins to lose to the Patriots. And then the Steelers will be playing for a playoff berth still on Sunday night. If either of those outcomes don't happen, they're eliminated before they take the field on Sunday night. So a lot to look forward to. That's Jordan York. I'm Mike Nicastro. Thanks for listening, watching, following, subscribing. It's a sick podcast, and we'll see you Tuesday.
And that's a wrap. Hope you don't miss us too much until next time. Follow the Sick Podcast Steelers Crazy on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, Google Play, and Apple Podcasts.